On this episode of This Week in Windows, we're going to take a look at some recent terminations of employment at Microsoft, as well as Microsoft's interest in Windows and its future. I'm Michael Tennell with TuxDigital, and this is your singular source for Windows news. This week we got some really interesting news from Microsoft. They decided to put Windows on the back burner and de-emphasize the investment and focus of Windows. We received word this week that Terry Myerson, leader of the Windows and Devices group, is leaving the company. Terry Myerson was a part of the Microsoft Corporation for 21 years. So it's safe to say that this news is pretty impactful. Microsoft has decided to end the employment of Terry Myerson, as well as the focus of the Windows group, or the Windows teams, by prioritizing Microsoft's cloud and artificial intelligence products, like Azure and things like that, instead of Windows. So they're going to be de-emphasizing Windows and putting more attention and money to cloud and the artificial intelligence space. That's it for this episode of This Week in Windows. I appreciate you sticking around for this very long episode. Thanks again for watching. I'm Michael Tennell with TuxDigital, and remember, this is your singular source for Windows news. By singular, I mean I have no intention of ever doing this again. Okay, so for the real show this time, on this episode of This Week in Linux, Facebook is still under fire for privacy violations, but Mozilla is trying to help users mitigate these issues with their new Facebook container extension for Firefox. There was some very exciting news for the GIMP team regarding the long-awaited next release of the software. We've got some updates for a couple of photo-related applications with RawTherapee and digiKam. We'll take a look at Barrier, a new fork of the Synergy software. Barrier is a project to help you use one mouse and one keyboard on multiple computers simultaneously. We'll take a deep dive into the latest updates for the Linux kernel because there are a lot of great features on the way. Then the Humble Indie Bundle is back, and we'll check out some updates for some distros, including OpenMediaVault, Pop! OS, Qubes, and more. All that and much more coming up. I'm Michael Tennell with TuxDigital. This is your weekly source for Linux GNUs. This week we got an announcement from Mozilla for our Firefox Facebook container add-on. This is an extension that allows you to have Facebook in its own special container. Now you can technically do this in the multi-accounts container extension or the container tabs extension. You can do it yourself manually. But this does actual extra things that the container system doesn't do. So for example, there's a feature where you go to Facebook, whether you're in a container or not, it will automatically activate the container for Facebook. This is possible in the regular one. You can have it where when you click comment and likes outside of the container, it won't actually activate the liking because you're not technically logged in on that profile. That's what something is not available. So you can technically do that, but the switch back and forth is where the Facebook container is good because the individual add-on allows you to have an ability to click links inside of the container to automatically leave the container. Whereas most of the time when you click a link in a container, it will keep you in that container. Whereas this particular extension that they made would take you out of that container so that Facebook couldn't track you anymore. You can already kind of do it by yourself, but this adds an extra feature on top of that makes it, much more privacy oriented. Naturally, because Facebook has been the quintessential example of protecting your right to privacy and not sharing your data. Facebook has now admitted that they track your phone calls on your smartphone if you have the Facebook app installed. So there's that. That's fun. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. This week we got an announcement for the release candidate of GIMP 2.10. Now, GIMP actually hasn't had a release since 2012-ish. So the 2.10 release candidate is actually like a pretty big news for the GIMP community. There's also a ton of features that are coming in 2.10. So for example, they've added the ability to have like a dashboard dock for monitoring so that you can, while you're using GIMP, you can have see how much resources that GIMP is taking while it's rendering filters and things like that. So, I mean, it's more of a developer thing that you can use to debug things, but overall, it is nice to know how much it's being used if you want. They've also had improvements for a new shadows and highlights filter, which is pretty cool because it makes it a lot easier to do certain types of image editing that you would normally do in something like Darktable or RawTherapee. They've added the ability to do masks on layer groups. They've also added the ability to recover from recover files from a crash. So if you're working on an image and GIMP crashes, when you bring GIMP back up, it will try to recover the files that you were working on so you wouldn't lose them. Now, this doesn't technically work right now in the release candidate, but it is scheduled for release with 2.10. So that is really nice for them to be doing. So overall, there's a lot of cool updates, and they're even making like gigantic updates for the GEGL or GEGL library, which is a graphics library. GIMP has a lot of potential. It's making it a big jump forward in the space. One of the reasons I also wanted to talk about GIMP is because I saw a video from Scale. So this video is titled "Why the GIMP Team Obviously Hates You." The topic is pretty interesting because it's one of the GIMP team members who is talking about why GIMP doesn't do things that the community wants them to do. One of the things that they said, GIMP is a huge project. It's had such a huge history, it's got like massive longevity. It is used by a wide variety of types of different, like people who like photographers and artists and all kinds of things. And the amount of people who work on GIMP is 6 people. 2 of those 6 people are core backend developers, and the other 4 are feature and patch builders and things like that. But there's only one person typically that works on the GEGL library. There's another person who does do some work with it as well, but majority of that library is built by one person. So their video is basically to say, while we don't hate you, we don't disagree with some of the ideas you have. Like they said, adjustment layers are fantastic. We would totally want adjustment layers. We don't have enough people to work on adjustment layers in order to make it a possibility in GIMP. So it's just I think it's an interesting video to check out if you want. It did give me enlighten me to some topics about what they were discussing, because I wasn't aware of how small the team was. The amount of people they have as developers and the amount of work they have been able to accomplish, it is very impressive. So maybe if there was more developers, then GIMP could be. We'll see what happens in the future, but 2.10 does look like a very nice release, and I look forward to trying it out. This week we got an update for RawTherapee 5.4. RawTherapee is a cross-platform open-source raw image editor. If you ever heard of Darktable, RawTherapee is essentially the same type of program. They do very similar things. The RawTherapee update added a new histogram matching tool, HDR tone mapping, and you can now do local contrast manipulation. This is mostly a maintenance update with a few features. But overall, I just wanted to make a note about RawTherapee because it's a really cool application. And if you're any kind of into photography at all, then you should definitely check out RawTherapee. There's another thing I wanted to talk about that was just in the previous topic of GIMP. RawTherapee and Darktable are now going to be in the future releases of GIMP. They're going to have it where you can have integration between the two. So you can open something in Raw and directly send it to GIMP. And in some cases, they're saying that they're working on it, maybe even opening like an instance of RawTherapee or Darktable inside of GIMP. If you haven't heard of RawTherapee before, definitely check it out. Well, if you're into raw image management, stuff like that. Tilix is a terminal emulator that has tiling Windows functionality. You may have heard of it previously of a different name because it used to be called Terminix. I went into more detail about that particular topic in episode 3 of This Week in Linux, so if you'd like to check that out, you can find a link in the show notes. But this one has a new update. We'll just talk about a couple, and that they fixed some transparency issues with the upcoming release of GNOME 3.28. I just wanted to talk about Tilix in a general because Tilix is a really cool application that if you would like to have some kind of like tiling terminal, it is a fantastic solution. And if you use X, the Quake mode is a really nice feature to have. So check out Tilix 1.7.7. This week we had an announcement from DigiKam. 5.9 was released. This is mostly just a bug fix release, but they also had some nice improvements for performance. They've improved some MySQL performance, and they fixed the support for XMP sidecar support. This is the last version of the 5.9 series, or the 5.x series, and this is mostly just a bug fix release, but there are a lot of cool things that if you're interested in checking out. DigiKam is a very cool photo management tool made by the KDE team, so if you'd like to check it out, you'll find a link in the show notes. This week we got an announcement for a fork of Synergy. And if you've never heard of Synergy, Synergy is a tool that is probably the most commonly suggested tool for having multiple machines but using the same input for both machines. So for example, a mouse or a keyboard that would be interchangeable between multiple machines. So the software is going back and forth and stretching back and forth. So you can go from one computer to the other without having to use a different keyboard or a mouse. So that's a really cool idea, but unfortunately, the 1.x series of Synergy has been deprecated, and the 2.x series is very different. And they have changed the approach in a very weird way. One of the things that turns me off of Synergy now, they made it so that when you connect to the machines, you also have to ping their servers for every connection. Like they're making their own server like a middleman type. In some cases, that kind of thing is not that bad to do. It could be beneficial depending on the software. But in this, that means that you would not be able to use the software without being on the internet. So if you're in a local intranet structure, you wouldn't be able to use it at all. And that kind of defeats the point in a lot of ways. So if you're at an enterprise or a company structure and you have multiple computers you got to work with, you can't without being actually access to the internet. This is a fork of that. Barrier is a fork of Synergy's 1.9 code base. So you can totally check out that. So it's a pretty interesting approach. There's also some hardware approaches if you like. So if you do give Barrier a try, let me know what you think in the comments or in the Telegram group by going to TuxDigital.com/Telegram and just let me know what you think. I kind of wish they were calling it Unbarrier, but anyway. Linus announced that it's possible that the Linux 4.16 kernel will be released very soon, within a few days or so even. I also want to talk about that they have released 4 new updates for the stable kernels that are currently supported. 4.4, 4.9, 4.14, and 4.15 all had point release updates. Let's talk about 4.16 that's coming out. They've merged a VirtualBox guest driver so that you wouldn't have to install guest editions inside of different distributions because they would be automatically installed by default with the driver. This means that if someone's a Windows user and they wanted to try out Linux, they wouldn't have to know about guest editions or install them. They would be able to just try out Linux in the way that it was kind of meant to be. So that's pretty cool. They've also added support for more ARM boards, specifically Orange Pi version 1, the Hummingbird 2, and even a D-Link NAS enclosure. There's also support for NVIDIA's Jetson TX2 display support and Tegra TX2 improvements. And there's a lot of more things like that improvement. There's been a lot of file system storage improvements, like ButterFS RAID 5 and 6 had a lot of fixes being done, so that's always good. One of the cool things about it is that AMD GPU DC now supports multiple display synchronization, so you can have a better multi-monitor experience with the new graphics cards from AMD. So that's very cool. That's the 4.16 kernel, but I also want to talk about the 4.17 kernel that's coming out because there's even cooler things coming with that too. I'm not really sure if it's cooler because the VirtualBox was pretty cool. But the AMD GPU DC that we just talked about is coming by default enabled in 4.17. You can activate it in 4.16, but by default it will be enabled in 4.17, so that is nice. You can have discrete GPU support in AMD KFD. These initialisms are so fun to say. You notice that? There's not that many. Oh, there's a ton. Anyway, so the Intel Cannon Lake Gen 10 graphics are now considered stable and will be enabled by default in 4.17. They're also adding AMD Vega 12 support. They're adding support for the ACPI time and alarm driver, and a really interesting RC flight controller driver for the Phoenix RC controller. And it's if you fly model planes or model helicopter, things like that, the Phoenix RC flight controller was for that. And maybe even potentially you can make it work with a drone or something. I don't know. But anyway, this is really cool news. This week we got a really nice update from Valve. They decided to open source their networking, their game networking sockets library, and this is a networking transport layer. It was based on, it was just a Steam only thing, so this could be cool. So it could be included into other other games where not having to require the Steam platform. That is very nice. So the transport layer uses a custom connection-oriented protocol. Overall, this is like a fantastic thing because it has bandwidth estimation, it has encryption based on AES per packet. It has a way to simulate tools for simulating loss and stats for like detailed stats measurements. So like overall, this is a really nice thing for them to be just decide to open source it, and because that's fantastic. They're still working on the functionality of it. So like not everything is full open source, and not everything is like developer friendly yet, or open source friendly, I guess I would say. So they are continuing to work on that, and they just ask people to bear with them, but it will become like fully open sourced pretty I don't know when, but hopefully pretty soon. Last week we talked about the GNOME memory leak that the GNOME shell was having. And this week, I wanted to bring it back up because there is some really good news that the leak has been identified in the garbage collection of the GNOME shell, and this bug is being currently worked on. They have identified what the problem is, and they've already started working on a patch to fix it. We don't know exactly when they're going to be able to fix it, but they did say GNOME shell 330 will have the support, have the fix. Now, whether it's going to be in 1804 for Ubuntu or not, we don't know for sure yet, but it is marked as critical and high priority for both Ubuntu 17.10 and 1804. So if it does get fixed within the time period before 1804 gets released, it will most likely, almost guaranteed, be added, but we don't really know for sure yet. Once we get the update, I'll let you know. OpenMediaVault 3.0.99 was released this week. This is mostly like a maintenance update. It's a great distribution for network attached storage, or NAS. It provides, first, it is a Debian-based distro for network attached storage solution. If you've ever heard of FreeNAS, FreeNAS is a network attached storage based on FreeBSD, and OpenMediaVault is the same kind of thing, but based on Debian. So if you're looking for a Linux-based distro for a NAS, OpenMediaVault is a really good option for that. It's really cool about it is that the administration of it is like a web-based approach, so you don't really have to install anything on the other machines that you're using it with. As long as they support those protocols, you can just set it up to just sync the files from the main machine to the NAS server, the OpenMediaVault server. It's very nice. If you're interested in any kind of like NAS solution, check out OpenMediaVault 3.0.99. Pop !_OS had an update this week for a release of the 1804 testing ISOs. So you can try out 1804 version of Pop! OS if you'd like to. But they also had some interesting updates for the Pop Shop, and which, by the way, Pop! OS, I don't like the name of your distro. I don't have a problem with the term Pop! OS, but the exclamation point and underscore is a little ridiculous. However, I am a big fan of that term Pop Shop. That is fun. So good job on that one. Except for the exclamation underscore. Take that off. Pop Shop. That's fun. Anyway, so they had a lot of interesting progress for the Pop Shop. And that is, you can see the download size of an application in application listings. And what's even cooler is that it's not just the deb file, for example. It includes the dependencies as well. So you see the full amount that you'll need to install before installing it, or before running. Like if you install an application through apt, it will tell you how much will be used. But if you're using like a software center, they typically don't. They don't tell you the full set. This is going to add that, so that is very nice. And they've also added some new graphical assets to the Pop Shop. So I look forward to trying out the new version of the Pop Shop, just so I can say that even more. Anyway, System76 also added that they are having support for the NVIDIA Titan V GPU. Now, if you haven't heard of that, that is a ridiculously powerful GPU, and it's also ridiculously expensive. I don't know if it's the most powerful, like outright You know, an AMD Threadripper or something might, I don't know, challenge it, but it's one of the top. And the cost of the Titan V is $3,000. So it's interesting that they put the effort into making the Titan V work for Pop OS, but I don't know many people are going to be able to justify the cost of a Titan V. I know I'm not going to. So if you do have a Titan V, you can totally use the Pop Shop in Pop OS. Qubes OS 4.0 was released this week, and it has a ton of features and improvements added since the previous version. First up, they've added the ability to switch from HVM to PVH for most virtual machines in response to the Meltdown Spectre problem, so they've mitigated that. They've made it possible to clone a VM into a new name and then automatically remove the old VM. You can now create USB virtual machines. Non-encrypted backups are no longer supported. So that's an interesting way of doing it. So like if you want to do a backup of your VMs, you have to encrypt it now. So that's that's a nice security improvement. And overall, there's been a lot of updates. For example, like Kernel 4.9.x series was updated to that series. They've added more flexible firewall improvements, like the unikernel integration is added. So overall, if you haven't tried it, Qubes OS is a distribution to basically manage virtual machines easily. So you would install Qubes OS, then you would install other distributions as virtual machines inside of Qubes OS. It's a really nice UI. It's really nice, like organized and things like that. So if you haven't given it a shot, feel free to do so. It is a very interesting thing. And on their front page, they have some like testimonials or opinions from people, including Edward Snowden. So it is very much security oriented and privacy oriented. So Qubes OS 4.0. Like to take a moment to give a happy birthday to Red Hat. They're celebrating 25 years of Red Hat. And they've also made an interesting article you might want to check out. They have a link in the show notes for 25 things you should know about Red Hat. One of the things I actually did not know, kind of disappointed what their answer was, but still interesting to know. The name Red Hat, I always thought came from, the terms black hat and white hat, hackers and stuff. That's where I thought Red Hat came from. Nope. It's because the founder of Red Hat used to wear a red hat during universities while people asked him for help, and they called him the Red Hat guy. Somewhat disappointed that it's not related to that, but still interesting because something mundane as the type of hat you wear becomes the name of a company, a mega billion-dollar company, and his longevity, like in the tech space, longevity is like amazing because they've been around for so long that they've seen so many things happening in the tech space. Most companies, if they last 5 years, they are incredibly lucky, and Red Hat's lasted 25 years, so that's pretty awesome. Anyway, once again, happy birthday to Red Hat. Next up in the show is Slax 9.4 was released, and Slax is a Debian-based distribution. This is mostly a maintenance features and bug fixes and things like that, but there are some nice cool add-ins to the distribution for this release. They've added the ability to easily switch off and on Wi-Fi devices with RF kill. They've improved icon detection for various different applications, enable hotkeys and also config so you can make it easier to control the volume for your sound devices. They've added X-Archiver, so you can more easily create archives and extract archives. But probably the most interesting thing that they've added for this particular release is a shortcut system for apps that will auto-install and then run applications. So, for example, you could have a shortcut on the desktop or in the menu system that is for an application that you do not currently have installed. But if you choose to open it, it will first install that application and will prompt you to install that application and then open it afterwards. So it's like a much easier, like a barrier to entry for people who aren't necessarily familiar with certain applications that are available via Debian repos. They make it easier to get certain things depending on which repo they're in. So that's a really interesting approach for Slax. So anyway, if you're checking it out, Slax 9.4. Next up in the show is the Canonical Corner. This week, Mark Shuttleworth had an interview with Swapnil Bhatia. Hope I said that one right. Swapnil does a lot of journalism for Linux and open source. So if you haven't heard of him, go check him out. There's links for this videos in the video description or show notes. He's talking about Canonical's approach to an IPO and what Mark Shuttleworth's opinion on doing it and when it might happen. Overall, it's a pretty cool video. You should check it out. But he says that he sees that in the future, Canonical will have partnerships with basically every large company, whether that's desktop, server, IoT, or whatever. They expect to have support, some kind of partnership with pretty much every big company. So that is that kind of a goal shows that they are, very serious about the approach for the company. Next up, we got a final, not necessarily final, they might change a little bit, but an official list for the removed items in Ubuntu 18.04 minimal installation. Notably would be Thunderbird, LibreOffice, Transmission GTK app, GNOME To Do, Baobab, Rhythmbox, Cheese, Shotwell, Totem, and a bunch of other things. It's basically going to remove all of the applications that might not be the preferred for like an experienced user. So you can install the distribution and then put whatever you want on it. So that's a really cool thing. So if you want to check out the full list, there's quite a bit more. So anyway, if you want to check it out, links are in the show notes. And finally this week, we got some updates from the Snapcraft team regarding updates to snapcraft.io. One of the things that is really cool about this is that they've added initial support for bases to target a new core base snap. So you can add, instead of just the core snaps, you can have new cores. The way snaps work is that you can either have everything all included, or you can have core snaps, which are essentially runtime. And they're improving the workflow and the functionality of those particular implementations. But another thing that they're adding is the ability to have better app integration with AppStream. So AppStream is a standard for data, like metadata for applications. You'll see it in RPMs and debs a lot. Not all applications have AppStream data included, but for a large majority of them do. And snaps didn't really work that well with the AppStream data, but now in future releases for snaps, they will. That is great. So it'll be better integration with various different software stores, application installation systems, and maybe it would benefit the Pop Shop. So this week we got an announcement for the Humble Indie Bundle 19. They have a lot of interesting games in this one. I already own this one, but it'd be really nice to have it for a very cheap price. Anyway, Polybridge is a really fun bridge constructor thing for a physics game. And also, I haven't tried this yet, and I totally want to do it, so I'm probably going to get this bundle anyway, just for this one thing. But there's a game called Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. That's such a weird, interesting game that I want to check it out. So there's also a lot of cool other games like Soma, and the Super Hot game is a really interesting approach to a first-person shooter type, very stylistic. And in a couple more days, we'll get even more games and see what's coming out. If you in the second tier of the bundle. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. Before we go to the next topic, I just wanted to mention that the link in the show notes for the Humble Indie Bundle 19 is an affiliate link that supports the TuxDigital channel. So if you do decide to purchase the Humble Indie Bundle, I would appreciate it if you do use that link so that the TuxDigital channel will get some credit, gets a little commission for it. So anyway, I'm definitely going to get it just for a couple of these games like the Keep Talking and the Super Hot. So let me know if you do get it. Let me know what you think about those games, and maybe we can play some multiplayer with it. Because the Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes is a multiplayer game, so that would definitely be fun to play with a community thing. Humble Indie Bundle 19. Just a reminder, we do a live stream every week for the show, and in the topic for Humble Indie Bundle, the Dark One in the chat mentioned that he thinks that Soma alone by itself is worth the price of the bundle, so that's something to think about. And also remember, affiliate link, hashtag shameless plug. So you know how all the Android phones have really old kernels? In fact, most of them have 3.18. If they haven't updated, they're not brand new. And even if they are brand new, they have 4.4 kernel. They're just super ancient. Well, Plasma Mobile team and the Holium team have been working on getting mainline kernels to work inside of various different devices. So this post from the Plasma Mobile team was able to get initial support for the Nexus 5 to use the mainline kernel with Plasma Mobile. So this particular test has version 4.9, and it has a lot of, it didn't support some of the features, but it's an initial developer build, so it's not intended to do that yet. They're going to work on that and improve some things like that. But it is possible to run this particular build on both the Nexus 5 and a Sony Xperia X2. So the approach they're doing is seem to be working on various different devices. So it's really cool to see. And they've said that if you'd like to try it out and give some feedback, that you can find them at I'll just have a link in the show notes if you'd like to try this out. So Plasma Mobile, Nexus 5, mainline kernel. Next up in the show, DuckDuckGo announced a privacy challenge, the $500,000 DuckDuckGo privacy challenge for 2018. This is a really cool campaign because it's like a crowdfunding thing plus a giveaway donation system thing. So the way it's structured is from now, well, actually from when they announced it, to April 10th, they will be conducting this challenge sort of thing. And whatever privacy, security-oriented projects and organizations and things like that are competing for getting donations from DuckDuckGo. Now, what's really cool about the way they're doing it is that it's based on the amount of funds that they, to get donations for the individual project. So, for example, Let's Encrypt and Tails and things like that are a part of the project, or part of the challenge. And like the Freedom of the Press Foundation, Fire for the Future, and Tor, and etc. There's all of these are participating in the challenge. Whichever organization wins the challenge, they get the money that they raised from the crowdfunding, but they also get, depending on what place they make, money from DuckDuckGo. So, for example, the first place organization gets $50,000 donation directly from DuckDuckGo on top of whatever other whatever donations they got from the crowdfunding. And the second place gets $40,000. $35,000 for third, $30,000 for fourth, $25,000 for fifth, and etc. The top 16 organizations get donations from DuckDuckGo. That is very cool. And even if an organization loses overall and it doesn't get in the top 16, they still get to keep whatever money that they crowdfunded for the challenge in the first place. So this is like DuckDuckGo does not get anything from this. They're just doing this campaign to sort of invigorate donations for these projects, as well as so that they would, give money to the projects themselves as well. So that's a really cool approach for a challenge, and I'm glad to see something like that being done, especially from like DuckDuckGo, because I am a big fan of DuckDuckGo. Thanks for watching this episode of This Week in Linux. If you like what I do here on this show, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, we have a Patreon at TuxDigital.com/Patreon. Or you can order the Linux is Everywhere t-shirt by going to TuxDigital.com/Linux is Everywhere. If you like some more podcast goodness featuring me, then check out Destination Linux. Destination Linux is a Linux discussion podcast that I'm now a co-host of, so check out the latest episode by going to destinationlinux.org. I know you must be thinking, Michael, 2 podcasts? That's not enough. Don't worry, I've got you covered. I was also the guest host for the latest episode, episode 4, of the Ubuntu podcast. You can check that episode out as well by going to ubuntupodcast.org. You can find links to that, as well as Destination Linux and many other things, in the show notes below. Just a reminder, the show is live every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern or 6 p.m. UTC, so join us in the live chat room to discuss all the latest Linux news each week. Thanks again for watching. I'm Michael Tennell with TuxDigital. And as always, keep using, learning, and enjoying Linux.